one problem which may blur the situation, render it unclear, is that Egypt, Tunisia, and all these countries are, okay, not totally authoritarian, but nonetheless maybe non-democratic. So this may give rise to the illusion that the problem was just some local, corrupted, non-democratic people, so we get rid of these people and we will have a thriving democracy economy. What is so brilliant and important is that the same formula is repeated in European countries where we do have formal democracy. Now, I'm not saying democracy has to go, but I'm saying something which should worry precisely the sincere Democrats, which is that, first, obviously, the multi-party democratic system that we have no longer can adequately represent or capture the level of social discontent. The example that I always like to quote, I was in England years ago, the last elections that New Labour still won. I remember 2 weeks before election there was a big show on BBC with hundreds of thousands of votes from people observing. They were selecting the most hated person in the United Kingdom. Tony Blair won by large majority. 2 weeks later, he won general elections. What does this mean? It means clearly that people did feel a certain dissatisfaction, which canalized itself into the hatred against Tony Blair, but somehow they felt that this dissatisfaction cannot be represented in their political choice. And we shouldn't play with this, because then, as the result of this, we get this irrational, apparently irrational outbursts like car burnings in France, where you get this pure protest without any clear program. The second dangerous thing that I always like to repeat, what is happening now in China, in Singapore, and so on, is something which should give us to think. In what sense? Now let's first recognize that to the devil what belongs to the devil, the good thing. Till now, even if capitalism needed here and there 20 years of dictatorship, in the long term, after a decade or so of dictatorship, when things started to move, as a rule, capitalism did always engender a demand for freedom, democracy, and so on. And let me be very clear. I think events clearly point in a certain direction which should worry us, that this eternal marriage between democracy and capitalism is approaching divorce. That is to say, the most efficient forms of capitalism today, Singapore, Malaysia, China, are what? This is capitalism in a way even more dynamic, productive, destructive in the capitalist sense movement. So as capitalism, it functions perfectly without democracy. And I don't believe, I'm not so sure as some of my liberal, not friends, I don't have liberal friends, acquaintances, who think, oh, give them 10 years, another Tiananmen. Well, maybe not. I think it's something much more ominous at work. So again, this divorce between capitalism and democracy. So, and we see signs in the West. Of course, let's not be naive here. It will not be the old fascist authoritarianism. I think that one of the directions, not universal, cannot be universalized, can be like, this is for me the interest of the phenomenon Berlusconi, an openly obscene functioning of power. The guy plays ridiculous jokes, makes fun of himself, but the system, this is the truth of Berlusconi. Forget about this spectacle, did he sleep with that stupid Ruby girl or whatever. The point is what is happening in the power structure. It reminds me, I think, if there was a really ingenious film of the last decades, it was that one by the Monty Python guy, Terry Gilliam, Brazil, from 30 years ago, where he already, with a kind of really ingenious insight, painted this new type of authoritarian regime, which is no longer this fascist order sacrifice, but superficially a kind of a half-obscene hedonist regime, something like Groucho Marx in power. But the key point is the following one, that precisely with this new preponderance of intellectual property, which I think doesn't work, it's a big problem for capitalism, and for other reasons, it's clear that with these new types of economic crises that we are getting, like the 2008 financial crisis, where all of a sudden it explodes, and to save yourself, you need fast, radical, large-scale state actions. Formal democracy doesn't function. This is what shocked me. Are we aware what happened in the United States in the fall of 2008? I remember when Bush, still president, first proposed $750 billion aid to the banks. Of course, today this is peanuts, nothing, but okay, it was a great sum of money. Then, first the Congress rejected it by 2/3, and then something mysterious happened. All the political elite, Bush, McCain, Obama, all of them together, put pressure on Congress, basically saying the Congress, listen, it's nice your democratic debates, but this needs to be done in a week. Don't bullshit us. They basically suspended democracy. And typically, Congress accepted it. A week later, it turned it around. So again, this would have worried me. But back to your point, the fear of Europeans, absolutely. And I will give you a sign of this fear, one of the signs, which I think is crucial. I always read it in this way, that they know what they are doing. This horrible thing that we refer to as Bologna school reform, which is the reform of higher education all around Europe, okay, in some countries more radical, in some less. You in Germany are not even so bad. True catastrophes are. I know that ex-Yugoslav countries are. I know that in France, Italy, it's horrible, like George Agamben told me. He almost couldn't get a job, world-renowned philosopher, England, and so on. This idea, to put it bluntly, I had a debate, public, with some French, he even later became minister, I don't know, in France, years ago, after that burning of the cars in the suburbs of Paris, and he gave me a wonderful, simple formula. He told me, you see, here is why we need social sciences. Now cars are burning in the suburbs of Paris. We don't need Marxist sociology. What we need is experts to tell us, hey, for example, psychologically, how do you control the crowds? How do you address them? Urbanistically, how you restructure the city easier to control, and so on and so on and so on. And I think that masked behind this pragmatic attitude of, social sciences shouldn't be up there in ivory towers, they should serve society's needs. It's precisely a concerted attack against what Immanuel Kant calls public use of reason. This change of higher education into factories to produce experts, which will be destined to solve problems, but problems the way they are defined by those in power. But this is not a true critical thinking.